Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I also would like to welcome all of you on behalf of our panel. We have Soraya, Selvi, Kamani, Fazana, and Venerable Tenzin. So glad that you can join us. Today is an extremely important subject, as most of our subjects are. We will talk about social transformation is individual transformation or self-transformation. This is a really good time, post-COVID, for us to reflect. And I think we've discussed this before. I think we all hoped that people would stop the hate, stop the hurt, stop the pain, and stop the greed, and think that, there is a bigger picture. COVID has shown us that people die alone. People are left alone. Old people are left alone in this time when they actually need family. And so many things have come to light, where we need each other more so than ever. When we talk about social distancing, I think that's the wrong term to use. It's actually physical distancing. But socially, we are social creatures and we need each other. And, this is also a time for parents. Sorry, there's someone on who's got the mic going? So this is a time for parents to teach their children. Children learn from what they see and how their parents behave and what their parents' thought processes are. And worldwide, we see a lot of hate, a lot of divisiveness. And so I think it's a time for reflection and for transformation. As a society, if we expect people to transform, how do we do that if we haven't transformed ourselves? In relationships, if we always keep passing the blame and we don't look inward and say to ourselves, we need to do something that is perhaps something that will change us before we try to change someone else, or should we even try to change someone else? So this is a very meaningful conversation today, guys, and I'm so glad you're with us. We will start by going to Selvi as usual. Selvi gives us, a look into the bigger picture of what is and what should be. So Selvi, over to you. I'm also not going to tell you guys about, our backgrounds. All of you know that we do a lot of work in different areas. We are quite qualified to speak on some of these subjects that we do talk about. And so I shall not tell you about, our backgrounds. Selvi, so Selvi will talk about what is social transformation and the mechanics on how self-transformation becomes social transformation. Over to you, Selvi.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. Now, this subject, which is social transformation, is self-transformation, is a subject which is of utmost importance for this year, 2020, because it is believed that a fundamental transformation of the world that we are living in is happening. And the rebirthing of the humankind on a new spiritual level is happening. Some believe that COVID-19 is one of the important agents for this transformation. But what is this transformation we are talking about? Transformation is very different to change. Change is where there is an improvement, but the original framework stays. Like your house, when you're doing a makeover of your house or you're decorating your house, the main structure remains, but you have changed everything inside. But transformation means there is improvement, but nothing of the original stays. The example that I can give you straight away is the butterfly and the caterpillar. The butterfly is nothing like the caterpillar, but it came from the caterpillar. Now, power of the individual, it has been found that when transformation happens in one person, it impacts the society at several levels. We tend erroneously or think erroneously to believe that one individual amidst millions of people has no power or agency, that what we say and do cannot impact anybody in any significant way. We could not be more wrong about it. Just as much as one minute atom can produce a nuclear bomb that can destroy the whole world, an individual has the power to transform the whole world. And I think Kamini, our colleague, will be saying more about it later on. But what are the mechanics of transformation? Self-transformation happens when you know and understand this power that the individual has. Mechanics of self-transformation is an ancient science of well-being in India and can be accessed through yogis and mystics who are unceasingly imparting this knowledge to all. What is the immediate effect of self-transformation? As soon as somebody transforms themselves, the immediate effect is felt by everybody around. Because first of all, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi Research Institute says that when one person meditates, 99 people around him will reap its benefit. Just by who she or he is, she doesn't do any physical action. Just by being what she is, 99 people benefit. For the individual who gets transformed, it's so beneficial. It gives them an equanimous approach of mind, peace of mind, free from anger, anxiety, and stress, empathy to the environment, love for people, living things, and most of all, one becomes inward looking and joyous. This is the most important product of transformation. But what happens to the family when one person gets transformed? At the family level, transformation works like magic. A yoga practitioner I know says, when one member starts yoga, it creates curiosity within the other members to see the changes in that member. And soon, one by one, all the members start attending the classes. One alternative medical practitioner tells me, when one family member is helped with well-being, domestic violence is reduced in the house, violent tantrums are significantly less, and there is more peace and understanding in the house. Many of them come back and say to this practitioner, my relationship with my spouse is so much better, and my anxiety and stress about my children has become a thing of the past. This is what we have in the family. What happens in society? At the societal level, whether it be an office, shop, charity organization, one can affect the entire culture inside that organization by being a transformed person. And it's more if he or she is a leader. It is important to be the change you want to see in society, right? If 10% of the public make small decisions to abstain from corruption, like not bribing a bureaucracy at a municipality or any other office to get work done, then the society gets transformed. We only want 10% to do this, and it gets transformed. In politics, at the political level, transformation of one individual, like Emperor Ashoka, a bloodthirsty, cruel, power-hungry conqueror of literally the entire subcontinent of India, was transformed after he witnessed the carnage and suffering of the Kalinga War, almost 2,500 years ago. This war has been the turning point in his life, and he became the embodiment of compassion, justice, and morality and benevolence. And none of his former traits remained within him. He was completely transformed. Now, finally, in the religious field, I could take the example of Sadhguru. He's a very modern yogi and a mystic. His self-transformation at the age of 25 has blossomed into a truly global transformation encompassing all the Western countries, India, Australia, New Zealand, Russia, and China, and more. Today, his transformational programs have reached almost 500 million people, with 9 million volunteers working on these programs. Now, the crucial thing to remember is to know and understand the power of the individual. In the family, society, or country, if an individual manages to reach or get through to the 10% of that members of the cohort, the corresponding cohort, the entire cohort shifts. Only 10%, right? So I would like to leave you with this thought before I conclude. For instance, in the parliament, our today's Sri Lankan parliament, if we can reach out to 23 MPs and effect some sort of a self-transformation in them, the whole of the cabinet will shift. Thank you.
Thank you, Selvi. Soraya, you want to add to that?
That's beautiful, Selvi. I just love the fact that you brought it down to such a doable number. And I think we have to really take that message home. 23 people, and then that comes to our message that people have to do their part of the work, right?
What is also interesting is what Selvi said about, if you meditate, how it affects, it has this ripple effect. And also, say if one member of the family, just take even exercise, you want to transform your body, you want to transform the way you live, you want to transform how you want to pick up on your health, and then if one person does it, you find other family members also resort to that. So, and friends do. So, I really think what you said is very important, Selvi. And hopefully people will take this to heart. Kamini is going to talk today about, at the macro level, historical examples where one's transformation that affected world transformation. For instance, people like Gandhi or Martin Luther King, Ashoka, Sadhguru, Mandela, Pope Francis, and the Buddha, Lord Buddha. So Kamini wants to talk about, how you can be the change you want to be. Over to you, Kamini.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you so much, Selvi, for such a wonderful introduction and outlining of this topic. My role is to show or talk or refer to some of the world leaders who have actually transformed the world using transformation and looking inwards, first going through their own internal change and then also letting it percolate to the rest of the community. And I would like to first start with my favorite example, which is Mandela. I think if some of you don't already know, during his initial push for removing or ending the apartheid, him and his team, they ended up actually resorting to a form of kind of terrorism or violence within the country. And when he was on trial, where he gave his famous speech, "I am the first accused," where he was sentenced, furthering that he was sentenced to 27 years of imprisonment. He used the term that he referred to the fact that he was forced to act in this way because of the oppression that he was experiencing, him and his people were experiencing. And so during this time of imprisonment, of course, he was an exceptional person. We all hear the little stories of how he was an exceptionally amazing person. But if you read the book, Walk to Freedom, he talks about the shift, the spiritual kind of shift where he felt a deeper connection and the spirituality. And ultimately that guided him towards a more peaceful resolution of ending the apartheid, because if you know, during his years of imprisonment, the violence really escalated in South Africa, the frustration. But what he did was he turned to an alternative, he turned to peace. And even unknown to his allies, he turned to peace, to negotiate. And that was a strong, that approach was what really helped him and his allies broker the end of the apartheid. But also there was an additional aspect of his friend Oliver Tambo, who was exiled from South Africa, and he was able to bring about economic sanctions against South Africa and create pressure on the South African government at the time to release Mandela. So I also just wanted to bring in the aspect of, yes, if you really want that big change, political change, you also do need to have additional tactics as well. But the key thing here is about Mandela and how his approach changed, and how everything around also had a domino effect. And of course, we have already referred to other examples such as Lord Buddha, King Ashoka, but also we haven't heard enough about the wonderful women, amazing women in our history. And there's this amazing woman who is a Liberian called Lema Roberta Gbowie. Soraya, you can correct me if I've said her name correctly or not.
You're correct.
Correct, thank you. So she's an amazing Liberian peace activist who was responsible for leading a women's non-violent peace movement called the Women of Liberia Mass Action for Peace. And this helped bring an end to the Second Liberian Civil War in 2003. And if you've read about the atrocities that occurred during that Liberian war, it's terrible. So many child soldiers, so much rape, so much violence. And she had collaborators. She worked with someone called Ellen Sirleaf, and they worked together to bring in a period of peace and free election, which seemed an unbelievable or unsurmountable task. And later on, she, along with her colleagues, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for their non-violent struggle for the safety of women and women's rights to full participation in peace-building work. And the key factor about her was that she used religion and spirituality as strategies to rally women for ending Liberia's 2 civil wars. And she worked with all the religious groups in the country. Other examples are Mother Teresa. We all know about her, how she used religion, and she started the Missionaries of Charity, which has almost thousands of people in almost 90 countries, helping people living in poverty all over the world. Another person, I mean, this woman, Harriet Tubman, if you ever feel that you do not have the power to change the world, this is one woman whose story is amazing. She was born into slavery. She was an American abolitionist. She escaped. And not only did she escape, but she made it her mission to start creating opportunities and helping others escape. She did 13 rescue missions, rescued 70 enslaved people. If you watch the movie about her, you'd be so inspired. And she used networks of anti-slavery activists and safe houses known as the Underground Railroad. Some of you may not even know, I didn't know until I was researching, there was a Tibetan princess called Yeshid Sorgal, who was born in 777 CE, who, being a princess, she refused going into marriage, and she learned Buddhism, and she attained enlightenment in her lifetime, and is considered the mother of Tibetan Buddhism. And she was a spiritual. If you look at these examples, there's so many, but I wanted to also focus more on those who use a spiritual approach, or who seemed, people who would never be able to move forward, like Tubman. If you look at the core strengths, one is so committed, and they were committed to benefiting mankind, and they were mainly guided through spirituality, and they also had like-minded allies. And something I want to add also is that it doesn't matter whether a person gets all the recognition. For me, I would say that even just seeding a thought, or mentoring people, or supporting people to turn in that direction is more than enough. Just fueling transformation, I feel, are key things that we can all do on an everyday basis. So those are my thoughts I wanted to share for today.
Thanks, Kamini. I was also doing some research looking to inspirational figures. And sadly, guys, I didn't come across anybody in Sri Lanka that I could actually think of, who maybe I haven't done enough research. And if there's anyone who's viewing us today, who's joined us today, if you can think of somebody, please send us a note on our chat, because I don't know whether any of you, Selvi, Soraya, Fazana, whether you come across somebody in Sri Lanka who's had that kind of charisma for the good, for good cause. I know there are individuals out there who are doing a lot of work to make change, but to actually lead other people to do the same, to transform others' lives. Can you think of someone?
In Sri Lanka, we have a person called Yoga Swami. He is one of the spiritual leaders, gurus of the time. He's no more, but he was living in the 40s and 50s. He has been able to actually set up a mission in Jaffna, and he has got lots of followers who became transformed because of him.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You know,
I would
Soraya,
like to also,
sorry.
I would like to say something to add to what Kamini was saying. You know, how Mandela became the agent of transformation when he touched the spiritual realm within himself. That is, by looking inward, he was able to touch that, and then he was able to take the inspiration from there. Mahatma Gandhi did the same thing in his actual fight against the British Raj. He articulated the strategy of beingness to the people around him. And he conducted his Salt March, which became the landmark in his nonviolent campaign to force British out of India. When asked by an American journalist, how did you manage to get that most powerful British people empire to leave? He said, it's not what we said, although that was important. It's not what we did, which was also important. It is the nature of our being at the time we conducted the campaign and the choices that we made that made the difference. You see, that spiritual realm within you is touched and it is brought out, and that is the power. That is the thing that actually made it happen.
And
Yes.
quickly to add, Carol, you asked if I remember somebody. When Sylvie spoke, I remembered Baba Moinuddin. He was a Sufi saint who was talking and teaching people many ways to love one another. And of course, sadly, within the Muslim community, they didn't accept his message because he was a Sufi. And then he came to the United States, and today there's a huge community following. There is a foundation, an ashram kind of thing. So yeah, I suppose we have missed some of the people who were doing great stuff for some reason or other. But you're right, Carol. I did a lot of research and I couldn't come up with a strong name or names.
Oh, I see. So one of our guests had said he was called Guru Bawa. So there you go. Let me see what she says. Yeah, he's referred to as Guru Bawa.
Oh,
so,
yes.
Yeah. So that's nice. Thank you, guys, because you know, I was really trying to rack my brains just to go back to Mandela again. Not only the spiritual side, he not just transformed himself. You know, societal changes had to occur, and while he was in prison, they taught other prisoners math and other subjects. You know, they drew on walls when they had to mine for rock. They just used it as a classroom. So there are so many ways that you can transform, but I suppose you have to also start believing that you can do it, you know. So yes, Mandela was really inspiration. I think that more so because in our lifetime, right? It's something that we all know about from our lifetime. Yeah, so moving on, Soraya. Soraya will speak on the political level, how a transformation within responsive citizenry can transform governments and politics. You know, Selvi touched on this before, you know, even about talking about corruption and how if you don't bribe somebody, and perhaps I think, Selvi, when you were telling us a story, you said, you know, you actually tell them, listen, if you want me to come back because you want some money from me, I'm not willing to do it. So can you please, you know, pass my documents or, you know, look into what I need to look into when you go to bureaucratic officers. So I suppose that's one way to do it. You know, you kind of challenge them with a nice tone.
Carol,
anyway.
Thank you for reminding me, right, where I have a principle by which, you know, when I go to government offices, they delay stuff because they want some money, right? And I tell them, look, you can delay, if it is even 3 months, I will come every day and I will wait for you to do it. But I am not going to do what other people do, and immediately the work is done.
So that's a really good start. Yeah, that exactly. In each one of us, right? Not to fall with the norm. So anyway, back to Soraya. Sorry, Soraya. So political level, how a transformation within responsive citizenry can transform governments and politics.
Thank you, Carol. I want to go back to this name that Kamini mentioned, Lema Gabowi. She is my role model. And, she was, Liberia was going through a terrible civil war. The girls and young girls, women were raped. People were not having enough food to eat. And then one day, Lema was in her home. Her son had asked for a piece of donut and she couldn't feed him. And then some women came and told her, we are sick and tired of this. So the question we need to ask today is, are you sick and tired of something that's happening around you? What are the values that you value that are being desecrated? What values do you have is a question. Because folks, we have to understand the reality of our existence can't depend on the degrees we hold. There has to be something more than a degree and a job that we are here for. And remember, the most popular agent of change is not a technique, it's a change of heart. So today we invite you to consider what values of you are being challenged, desecrated, are not happening in the world today. So don't wait for others. And it is time for us, all of us, to take individual action. And I'm proud to say, my sisters here, every one of us, we have taken individual action to rectify, to correct, and to bring notice of things that are broken. So our invitation is, if you want a legacy, not just leave your legacy, live it. Ask yourself, what is it that I can do? So it has to be driven. This doing thing has to be driven by the values you are connected to. What do you care about so much that you are silent? What are you silent about? So this is a waking up question that you have to ask. And then when you realize that you're silent on this issue, to make things happen, join together and build some strength. So we know, Carol mentioned about how we can bring about political change. We went through a crisis, a constitutional crisis 2 years ago. Then there was one a few months ago, a few weeks ago, where there was an amendment was sought to the Constitution. 39 concerned citizens filed petitions. If they had not filed those petitions, the amendments would have all gone through. Because of the mere fact that 39 people filed those petitions, the Supreme Court listened to them and made some very powerful amendments. Number one, which they said, the president does not have total immunity. Nobody is above the law. So some people might say this is not a huge victory, but social transformation is a stagger process. You're not going to get everything in one buffet. One step forward, 2 steps back. And lots of people will stay on the sidelines and say, this is hard, give up. So, but we have to stay on the course. So again, so we go back to that most important question. What are your values that are being desecrated today? How can you stay silent if you value honesty, transparency, integrity in your political system? In the most simple form, have you written a letter to the newspaper? Have you called 10 people to your home, had a discussion on this? Have you gone to your minister, MP, and spoke to him about it? There's so much we can do. We have not explored a minutest part of what we can do. This is my time. I sent a note to everybody and said, please keep to time. So look at Lema Gabowi, watch her movie, pray the devil back to home, be inspired, and we'll get back again in the discussion. Thank you, Carol.
So Soraya, I just want to tell our viewers, we are a non-political group. Yeah, I just want to clarify, when we talk about politics, it's because it also affects what we are talking about that particular day. We are not here to support any person, any party, or any views that are anything but ours here. And as much as we say we are non-political, sometimes a lot of these topics border on the fringe of politics. So I just wanted to clarify with you guys,
Yes.
right?
I want to detour that, Carol. No matter who is in power, these are issues that impact our democracy. So it was in that spirit that I spoke on that issue.
Of course.
And yes.
Yeah, of course. And I think this citizens waking up without complaining from their seat, whether it's about politics, whether it's about something out in the open, whether it's something that's happening at home, if we are all silent participants, I always say we are also culpable when you're silent participants, right? So if you don't like something, you have to speak out. Not only should you speak out, but you got to do something.
Yes.
Speaking out is not enough. And I want to tell our viewers, we women on Wisdom Wednesdays, we talk about issues, but this is only the start to what we have planned going ahead.
Yeah.
Because if we want to affect real change, we have to get out there and work.
Yeah.
It's just that the COVID is holding us back, right? So anyway, yeah.
And a simple analogy, I would say, wake up in the morning, look at the most beautiful potted plant in your house, and ask yourself, am I going to be that potted plant, beautiful, staying static in one place? Or am I going to do something about something that is broken or breaking or going to break?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Soraya. You know, this is not only in your personal lives. I think if we talk to our private institutions, our businesses, right, they can effect so much change in just their leadership styles, right? I want Fazana. Fazana will talk on this on the societal level in social, commercial institutions. If business leaders and civil society leaders transform, how it impacts the society. Fuzzy?
Thank you, Carol. Well, I also have to start at the core with individuals, because it is individuals who make up a society, and even in the workplace, it is all about individuals. So human beings are relational beings that find the deepest fulfillment in relation to others. Family defines the most important relationship, especially the most sacred relationship between a man and a woman, through which new life is formed in that love. So experience in the family forms the foundation of how every person sees and interacts with the rest of the world. So this is the core. Relationships within the family, between husband and wife, parents and children, and among siblings are instrumental for developing the virtues that underlie all positive social relations, be it in an office or a society. So I feel I had to go back to the core, Carol, though you told me to talk about transformation in the workplace, because it starts with individuals. I think a good example is Korea, which developed the tradition of the extended family to a very high degree. There's lots of literature on the core of its cultural heritage, which was on the concept of Honji Kinjan, which taught that the Korean people should live for the benefit of all humanity. I mean, that is so beautiful. And if everyone thought like that and took that into the workplace and to society, we'll have no issues in this world. So if you look at the responsibility of social transformation of the workplace, it rests with both the employer and the employee. Everyone in the workplace is expected to ceaselessly strive towards and pursue the achievement of equality. So the fallacy of equating representativity with achieved equality is exposed in focusing on what really matters. So understanding equality as including the promotion of treatment of human beings by human beings as human beings is important. And this is what is lacking in many offices. Though socially we have come a long way, as Kamani and Selvi and even Soraya mentioned, with the abolition of slavery and the salt tax in India, abolition of segregation, capital punishment, universal suffrages. We've come a long way in many social transformations. But I still feel in the work environment, as Selvi rightly said, that inward thinking of the human being is not there. And this I've experienced in all workplaces. Always ready to defend ourselves, always ready to pass the blame. We need to stop and look inward. And if so, my thing is, I always tell companies that they also should start meditation, which hasn't happened yet, right? But workplace meditation, I think, will really help put people on the right calibration, because this inward thinking of what have I to improve, where am I to change, that is not seen yet. I can challenge in any workplace. So it is with that that you can build the team spirit as well, because you become more aware and more conscious of your surroundings, of your team, of who needs help, the sensitivity, and the inclusiveness, the non-discrimination. All these issues that we face in workplaces can be solved if we can bring that inward thinking concept. So I feel that, in this social transformation, it requires a shift in the collective consciousness of the workplace. And that collective consciousness is made up of individual consciousness put together. So if cities which have reinvented themselves to serve, for example, conscious transformations of a social type, like South Africa in 1994, where it ended apartheid, I don't see why companies can't transform. But they need to collectively be conscious from the leadership onwards, that this is needed. Of course, many companies have wellness programs, they have gyms, they have healthy canteens, they have medical tests, but these are all, to me, very physical and externally, to a sense. But that mental, internal analysis of oneself and then collectively understanding each other is a definite gap. So, to understand this transformation, it's not like on a stage where, a sudden, pumpkin becomes a coach and Cinderella becomes a princess. So nothing like that happens in the real world. So it would take a lot of time. It would take a lot of hard work and a lot of conscious effort. But the results in an organization would be tangible and rewarding if they go through this individual change into a collective change. And this is what I want to leave behind today. Thank you, Karen.
Yeah, Farzana, Kamini, add to that, please.
It really intrigues me because it's so true. Because, for example, even things that I've seen, say, for example, companies have sexual harassment policies, anti-sexual harassment policies, and they put it out, publicize, but it still happens, and it happens by some of the leaders, the senior level people in the organizations, and no one does anything about it. I don't know if anyone has any positive experiences to relate, but I've been seeing that quite a lot. And also people are very wary of stepping up and speaking about it because they feel that their careers will be over. Because, if a woman wants to try and apply to another place, they will say that she's a troublemaker, for example. Whereas, totally ignoring that the senior person is the one who's violating all these policies. Selvi, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, it's very, very familiar, this kind of a scenario where you are the troublemaker, whereas you are a person who has actually indicated that you will not participate in things that does not support people well-being, right? If it is a company that is actually bent on profit at the expense of people's well-being, don't participate in it, and you have to say it. Never mind, you'll lose the job. Yes, and you'll be black marked or whatever, but that's a price you need to pay. But this goes a long way to change the culture in that company, right? Because see, once you go into an office or a company or an NGO or charity, right, and if you insist on choosing the decision for compassionate reasons and for life affirming, right? If you constantly do that, that affects the people around you. Oh, she's brave enough to stand on her own and take these decisions, you know. Like, for instance, I can tell you somewhere I worked, I was there as a senior person, but I was never part of any contract working groups, you know, that decides on contracts, because they knew that I will not be agreeable to, you know, to decide on the contract based on the bribes that they give, right? So it was not said, I didn't say anything, but they knew. And I was never part of any of these working groups or commissions, as it were, because they can't deal with me, because I will be the odd one out. And I paid a price. I paid a price, but still, that is the way that if each one of us need to bring this in, the anti-corruption.
I
There's
think
a comment
it's nice.
by one of our viewers.
Yeah.
I fully agree. You know, one of the HR problems that they face with people who are highly hired purely on paper. This is such a common issue, right? Because our education system is also such that, you know, kids are made to study and memorize and do tuition, and on paper they have it all, but their team dynamics are poor, supporting each other, working as a team, and thinking out of the box so they can follow the whole lateral process. But if there is an issue, they don't know how to deal with it. And today you have to think on your feet, especially with COVID, right? Companies need to adjust and be flexible. So actually, if meditation and inward thinking and self-analysis comes in, it would help. And one of the ways as HR professionals to diagnose this, as some of you know, is some of the psychometric tests that are available and assessment centers. But even some people go through those gaps as well, and then become a huge burden in the office space as well. So yeah, these are very, very common. I mean, I have experienced it. Yeah.
And quickly, Carol, I want to add, thank you, Farzana, for that beautiful comment. I think in order for us to change and transform, there has to be a lot of courage. And courage is not the absence of fear. It is having the fear and still doing it. So we have to remember that this is that process where we take one step forward, two steps back. So like Selvi said, she took a stand. And that stand is going to need enormous amount of courage and commitment from you.
Thank you.
You
Thank
know,
you, Carol.
this also takes us back to, you know, all our, I don't know if the viewers have noticed, all our shows that we do, the forums, they're all interconnected, right? We try to go forward from last week's, the last forum. So last time we talked about the happiness quotient. You know, most companies, I mean, understandably, they had to look at the bottom line, they had to pay salaries, they had to make a profit, etc. But if they also look at the well-being of their staff, then I think the contribution from the staff was going to be that much greater. Whereas most companies operate based on fear psychosis. It's because either you have to be the top earner within the company, the top marketing person. So they put this pressure on you and actually sometimes break you because the demand is greater. So if there's one person who keeps the performance level at a high level every single time, that person who's doing that also has to give up a lot to achieve that, whether it's the family life they give up or whatever, right? So maybe if companies also look at, like Bhutan did, you know, look at the happiness quotient, then you know, then the GDP will automatically start rising because you have happier staff working for you. So these transformations can happen at so many different levels, right?
Absolutely.
Venerable Tenzin, you have waited very patiently. As you all know, Venerable Tenzin is a bhikkhuni. She's been a bhikkhuni for 6 years. She had the honor of being ordained by the Dalai Lama. How fantastic is that? And she follows Tibetan Buddhism. Am I right?
Yep, that's right.
So Venerable Tenzin will talk about, you know, what we can do within religious frameworks, how the transformation within religious leaders, monks, gurus can transform society. Over to you.
Thank you. Well, I think in the context of a religious and spiritual space, it was actually a little bit sad and depressing to hear that the previous panel, Soraya and Kamini, couldn't think of anyone in Sri Lanka, nor could I, because we take so much pride in Buddha Dharma and, the founders of certain religions. So obviously, when we ask the question, can religion and spirituality contribute? Can we work within that frames for transformation? Absolutely. The founders of these religions this lasted thousands of years did that. There were massive transformations that we actually reap the benefits to some extent even today. And all of you confirm that personal transformation, these particular individuals and all their names are mentioned, so I won't go into it. But I do want to look at what then has not worked. Why do there's such a gap between when these religions were started and there was transformations, and today we look at the situation and there hasn't been that much of a progress. We have gone backwards. So I mean, when you look at a religion as institutions, they carry a lot of power because they carry the symbols, of our identity, and they have become repositories of tradition and culture and rituals for us. They're often there when we are born, and they are there when we die. They play a huge role in our lives, and usually we inherit religion. It's not something, I mean, occasionally we do have the choice of being touched by the teachings or a particular person and you change. But in Sri Lanka, I think we are by and large, we are born into a religion, and we give them a lot of power and authority. And we expect certain things from our faith leaders, don't we? As in return, we expect them to guide us, give us a proper view, and help us navigate the view of this world, and teach us about morality and ethics, and teach us how to be happy, how to apply the spiritual teachings that have been passed down. So in this expectation, I think what has happened to us is that we have abdicated our own thinking. We have actually put too much expectation on the other, having that advice. Usually, we expect the religious leaders to tell us what is right and wrong. And sometimes we surrender. Progressively, we have surrendered our own ability to be discerning and think logically for ourselves. As time goes on, then we become more and more insecure, because particularly as women in these institutions, we absolutely have no power. Men are considered to have more capacity and spiritual connection with the higher powers. Women are somehow considered less capable, less spiritually able to attain higher selves. So as a result, I think women are even less capable of thinking. We tend to look at these authoritative figures for advice far too much. So, and then when things go wrong, because we put them, monks and whoever, other religious leaders, whoever we look up to, we put them on pedestals and we shower them with adoration. They are treated like film stars, expect far too much. And when they fall down, when we blame them, we have completely abdicated our responsibilities. I think Soraya touched on that really well, and I think Selvi and Kamini, all of you, because in any relationship, and religion and spirituality is no different, we need to learn to check up. We need to have our own ethics. We need to know what is right and wrong, and it has to come from our own core. So if somebody is telling us something otherwise that doesn't sit well with us, at least we will know that that is not for us. That person's teachings or guidance is not going to suit me, because we can then think for ourselves and say at this particular time, this is not going to work for me, and you can walk away. But if you have no understanding, you have no basis, you're so full of self-doubt, then of course you're going to believe anyone that whatever you're being told, and we become very vulnerable and very hurt. So we know, as in charismatic leaders have guided people to their deaths in some instances, if you remember the Jonestown massacre and things like that. And on the other hand of that is that when we find a spiritual leader that we can truly inspire us and guide us, then of course there's a transformation. And we absolutely must have an idea how to pick who is right and who is wrong, who is going to guide us to enlightenment and divine, divinity, or whatever it is that we are looking for, to bliss and rapture, as opposed to disaster. So I think we firmly need to retake that responsibility and take it very seriously. We need to learn, we need to study whatever scripture that we believe in. So when we are being taught, that we can discern whether that is correct. If we don't have time to study these things, I think we need to take some confidence, learn to trust our own intuition. We need to take back our own power. And from that basis, we can become agents of transformation ourselves. We can find suitable teachers because we will know how to judge. Within that, we can connect with positive communities that are in tune with our own values, congruous with our own values, and we can transform through our practices. And I don't need to tell you that our minds and our minds have huge potential, infinite potential. I think Selvi quite correctly gave many examples of this, many experiments that have been done through meditation and various other practices, how we can affect the changes within our communities, within our households, and even the country. So I won't talk much more about it. And what I'm urging you to do is, please connect with your own values. Find out what matters to you, and then work from that base. So at this very crucial moment of having such an enormous transformation, as Selvi said, I'm referring to COVID at this point, this gives us a chance to truly connect with our vulnerability, our humanity, our humanness. So putting aside all our differences, gender differences, political differences, ethnic differences, geographical distances, we have one single common enemy that we are dealing with. And in preparation for that, I would like, in acknowledgement of that, first as women coming together, I would like to do a meditation. And please just raise your hand or let me know if I'm going over time. So I invite you to just make yourself comfortable wherever you are. If you're seated or lying down or whatever is most comfortable for you. And you can close your eyes if that's okay. We'll just take a couple of breaths just to connect with our bodies and the present moment. Just gently breathing normally. Just connecting and staying with the breath for a second. This meditation, I thought of doing this particularly to develop our connection and kinship with other fellow human beings, because we are primarily going through the same things at this particular time. And I also want to honor and acknowledge all the women and to come into our own power and to feel comfortable with who we are. So with that, I would like you to just take a moment to see what is coming up right now. It could be things that we just discussed as a result of whatever we talked about right now. Something may have stirred in your mind. Something undesirable, something painful. We talked about many fear that people are feeling right now, and the transformation that's occurring through COVID, whether we like it or not. And as we think about these things, watching our feelings and emotions, we breathe it in completely without resistance, just accepting and opening ourselves up to feeling whatever it is that's coming up and meeting us at this particular time. So for far too long, we've been surrendering to others. We've been following at workplaces, for some of us within our marriages, in our families. As women, we have had to surrender quite a bit in our lives. But today, we are just surrendering to ourselves. It's more in acceptance and love. So whatever arises for you, just breathing it in. And just recalling that millions of other people are feeling the effects of uncertainty. It could be trepidation, anxiety, frustration. Just think what it is like to share with possibly 500, 600 million people going through the same thing as you. We just take this moment to connect and recognize the pain that comes in all different guises. Just breathing in, accepting, and building a kinship with the fellow human beings. And once we truly connect and accept our own feelings and pain, it becomes easier for us to know it in other people. We can become more empathetic. And we can become more open to feeling without resistance. So if it is frustration that you're feeling currently, rather than blaming anyone, we just breathe it in and just think of millions of others who feel frustrated about the injustices of the world, the inequalities, the impending challenges. We open our heart and feel several other millions who are feeling exactly what we are feeling. And through this breathing, we are cutting through culture. We are cutting through economic status. We are cutting through religion. We are cutting through all our barriers, intelligence, gender, whatever the divisions we feel. Our feelings are exactly the same. We tell various stories. We might speak different languages, but what we feel when we drop the story and the language, our emotions and feelings are exactly the same as the next person. We might live in different continents, different cities, but we feel the same thing. So breathing in, if you tap into some bit of joy, gladness, connection, just breathe it out to all the people who are now connected with us, to all the people who are feeling same as us. We are sharing whatever we hold precious, our joyousness, our energy, our positive thoughts. We are sharing with the world with our out breath. Now truly feeling that our hearts are truly open to our own feelings and the connection that we feel with the rest of humanity. Just sit with that for a second. We have in common a lot more than we think we do. Through just by breathing, through connecting, opening our hearts, dropping our resistance, we can affect more change in the world than all our hectic activities. Because our energy, our breath is hugely powerful. And it grows exponentially. So thinking that, wishing for all our goodwill, us coming together, creating this space, creating these ideas with a sincere heart. May this benefit all living beings. You can return to the breath. And when you feel ready, you can open your eyes.
Thank you, Venerable Tenzin. That was emotional and it was very connecting and very releasing, actually. So unfortunately, we've come to the end of our show today, and I want to remind all our viewers, our next forum is on the 11th of November. Please join us then, and please pass the word around that we are trying to effect some change. Even the meditation is part of that, so that we spread this goodwill and these endless possibilities that you too can be part of this change. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to this wonderful panel. And on behalf of our wonderful panel, to all you viewers who have joined in. Please continue to join us, and please continue to make some change in your life so you transform you and your family around you and the world around that. It's kind of a ripple effect. Thank you very much from Wisdom Wednesdays. See you next week, the following week on the 11th of November at the same time. Bye now.